welcome to a Buy Round podcast special. I'm James Graham, and in this 10-part series, I'll discuss the biggest, most talked about topics around our great game.
Rugby League Roundtable.
Joining me, leading journalist Danny Weidler.
So I thought, oh, that's a bit odd that the boss of the game hadn't heard about it.
Current South Sydney Rabbitohs coach Jason Demetriou.
A powerful try.
Former Premiership winning CEO Shane Richardson.
You've got to make some really unpopular decisions.
And Cronulla Sharks captain Dale Finucane.
And the Sharks are off and running.
Today we touch on a subject very close to my heart, representative football.
A Buy Round podcast special.
Rugby League Roundtable. Okay, so the next topic gives me some of my greatest memories, but it comes at a cost and there's a compromise required. We're talking all things representative football. I'll go to the coach first. When and where should Origin be played, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah. I don't actually mind where it's played at the moment. I don't think you're going to get any value out of playing at the end of the season. I think it'll die away. I think the fact it's in the middle of the year, but I think we could almost have a 3-week standalone and just have a break in the comp. 3 weeks, middle of the season, go at it, and then put it to bed.
But then, therefore, we'd need to extend the competition, right? Or do we shorten the number of rounds and we just have Origin as a, we still do 27 rounds?
Well, that's the biggest problem, isn't it? It's all about revenue.
Yeah.
So the players don't want to extend the season because that eats in how long that you're playing for, obviously.
37% of all the revenue for the game.
That's the biggest problem. So it's not really going to change because playing at the end of the year is going to affect revenue. So that's not going to change it.
And it also, if it's played at the end of the year, in my opinion, it's the official death of international football.
100%. It is.
Agreed.
It is. So again, if you have that 3-week break, then you have some internationals in and around that. So your Samoas versus your Tongas like they've done before, and we did it for a year or two and then stopped doing it.
But then, do Rugby League take the initiative? And why do we play by the rules of it's international football? Do Queensland and New South Wales enter the international field?
No.
What instead of Australia?
Instead of Australia?
No.
No. But okay.
You just want someone for England to play against different.
How do we deal with this? Because every single year, it's a rinse and repeat of the headlines. One club has an overrepresentation, and they complain, "I'm losing my players. A player gets injured." Like, I don't know if there is a silver bullet for this. I just think it makes for good conversation from different points of view. And I came to you first as the coach because you're the one that's affected. And you get the player with that Origin experience and the benefit that comes with that representative honour for the player.
Yeah.
But really, you get impacted the most.
Well, it derailed our season, to be honest. We're 8-4 going in Origin, and then you pick up injuries, which you could argue you could have them at club training. Then you get the breaks of players going in, coming out. For 6 to 8 weeks, if you're a side that has a few players, it's a huge disturbance. And there's ways, obviously, to tackle that. How I tackle that next year will be very different to how we approached it this year in terms of preparation through the pre-season, being prepared for when these players are gone or if they go, and how we handle it to get mentally prepared for it a bit better. But it's such a revenue earner for the game. It's not going to go anywhere. And for us, it's an honour when we hear our players are selected. You get the teams get named, and you send the messages around to the boys, congratulations, and the chat on the WhatsApp is awesome. There's so much adulation from the club and excitement for those players who get to go in and play in what is regarded as the best footy in the world.
So can I ask you, you've experienced it also when you're at the Broncos. That has an even greater impact, doesn't it? How did they handle it? Did it derail them as well? Is it something that you have to just live with as a Broncos team, and you have to learn that's going to be factored into your season?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just the Origin or it's the injuries that come out of it as well. I think if you go in Origin with a pretty healthy squad and you're able to stay healthy during that period. But if you're losing 3 or 4 players and you're picking up injuries to other players in key positions during that period, so it's not necessarily just Origin, but that obviously is compounded because those players are going off and playing. But in Brisbane, it was just, next man up, off we go, and away we go. But I think the game can schedule the draw to suit clubs that potentially are going to have players playing in it. For us, we didn't have our first bye till round 16, leading into Origin 2. We were always probably a club at the start of the year that was going to be impacted by Origin. So I think, the game could probably, by looking at the draw, try to balance that out a little bit to make it a bit fairer for the clubs that are going to get impacted.
I don't think it's something we can have at the end of the year, purely because obviously different stages of the season where, you might finish in round 27 or you might make the grand final. So there's a 4-week period there where players aren't going to be potentially running, playing, doing the things that they should be. I look back to the 2020 season where obviously it was affected by COVID, and being involved in that camp was in Magenta Shores. So the guys that bowed out earlier, that didn't make the grand final, they went there for an initial camp to sort of train and, keep fit, make sure they were still doing what they should be. And then the grand final guys came back, after that. So, but I don't think that's the best way to do it because, you can't always have a camp-based system where you've got people in a camp for 4 weeks away from their families to then play 3 games, you know what I mean? So that's a 7-week period for Origin alone that you'll be dedicating that time to. And I just don't think that that's sort of feasible as a long-term goal.
It certainly doesn't get the same amount of interest and viewership.
No.
Either being played at the end of the season. Obviously, we have our kick-off season. We have a number of events like Magic Round. Then it's Origin. And then it's pumped up for the finals. I think if you were to have this big pump up and this huge lift for finals and then, we've got Origin at the end, it doesn't have the same impact.
Can I just throw something out there from a media perspective? Like, I work for Nine. You'll notice that this is probably not something that you naturally think about, is that a lot of the negativity towards Origin, personal attacks, and also attacks on the where it should be, when it should be, dead rubbers, it comes from Fox. Fox don't have the rights to Origin.
Do you genuinely think it does come?
A lot of it comes from that side, and I notice these things. Given that,
But I think it's just.
I'm not saying this.
I think personally, it's just a conversation around when to have it.
I'm saying a lot of it's driven.
Well, the reason for that though is very simple. Though it's all money, because the reality is they've got a competition going like that. Then Origin comes along with the reduced games, and their ratings go like that, and they haven't got Origin.
Yep.
So they only get to build up. So there's a gap here for them, which is massive.
I'm just saying it's part of it.
Right,
I'm not saying that it's the only reason. But just something to think about in the back of your mind when you're talking about it and you're having the discussion, that you've got to think about why that some of the discussion might be happening. I understand clubs can impact seasons massively, but from a media perspective, I'll get criticised for saying it, but that's part of it.
From a player's standpoint as well, if it is a fixture that you're looking at to have at the end of the year, that's something that cuts into annual leave as well. So if you're losing around 27 and then 5 weeks later you've got a fixture that you've got to play in, it's kind of like you've got to consider your family as well. It's not just you who's playing rugby league. It's kind of like you got to, happy wife, happy life, happy family sort of thing.
Does it almost feel like a chore?
Well, it would just feel like it's a different sort of setup where, as I said, you've got to maintain yourself for that period of time. Usually, so now we've got a 9-week period where we've got off. You can do with that what you will. You can do nothing for a month, and then for the second month you can really rip in. You can factor that in how you like. But for those guys who would be involved, they would have to be training for that 5-week period hard because they've got to keep their conditioning up. They've got to be battle hard and ready to play. And then their leave would be paused once they're actually playing the fixtures, and then they would have the rest of their leave. But they've spent 5 of those weeks training and working hard. So really, their break's a month.
Dale, I hate tearing Origin down because, as someone who loves watching the game, and I look forward to it like nothing else. I really look forward to seeing this contest and the brutality and everything it brings. And it is slightly different to club football. And it's something that I think, for instance, AFL again, they would be envious of what rugby league has in this concept that has just been, it is a powerful concept. It is a huge revenue raiser. And I think I'll never be able to experience what you've experienced, but I could imagine the thrill and the pump up you get playing for your state in such a gladiatorial contest must be. It's a money can't buy experience, and people don't get that. People don't get that experience. I mean, I watch and think, wow, that would be unbelievable to be part of.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, and obviously, being lucky enough to have success throughout my career, particularly in Melbourne early on, was obviously the grand finals. But the interesting thing about that is Melbourne's not when you come to Sydney to play, it's generally like a 50-50 crowd, or when we played. Who else did we play? We played the Cowboys. It was very much a 50-50 type crowd. When we played Origin in 2019, where Teddy scored the winning try in the 80th minute, it's just the Blues. You know what I mean? Like, there's a handful of Queenslanders, but it's just the Blatchies Blues everywhere, and that's a feeling that you've never been able to replicate in any other grand final, given that you got a majority crowd, 85,000 there, the way that it was won as well. Like, that's just a feeling you never take away.
Were you there in 2016? Was that you playing Melbourne, Cronulla? No.
Yes.
That's the most one-sided crowd I've seen in a club grand final, and that was unbelievable. But to me, that's how Origin feels a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, and you get the same when you go up to Brisbane as well. You've got the Queenslanders, and that's a hatred up there as well, and that's what you love about it as well.
It's special, isn't it?
It's nothing better than Origin in the crowd for Suncorp.
It's unbelievable.
Magic. But I think part of the thing that irritates clubs is I think Origin, whether it be Queensland or New South Wales, still need to respect the NRL and the game as much as they want everybody else to respect Origin. And I think the extension of the camps, it's now grown out to an 18, 19-man squad. I mean, you look at the Cowboys, they picked Tom Dearden as 18th man in Origin 1. Tom Dearden didn't play against Parramatta. They lost by 2 points. Their season's over. That has a huge impact on that club to sit there in a blue shirt. Now, I'm sure there's another Queenslander who could sit there who can offer just as good a backup. He might not be the very first choice, but unfortunately, that's, for my opinion, you shouldn't be able to take a player away from a game to sit there as an 18th man in an NRL game. If his team's playing that weekend. If Cowboys had the bye that weekend, no drama. Tom Dearden sits as 18th man.
I do think, though, let's be honest, if you're at Canterbury this year or on the bottom sides, and you would love the fact to have the number of players in the Origin, because at the end of the day, it means you're on top of the ladder. You don't pick sides from the 13th and 14th team. The second thing about that is, though, and it's really important, if you look at who's won the grand final over the last 6 or 7 years, they've all dominated by players in Origin, but they've still managed it and went on to win the grand final. The only thing that'll ever pull you back really is injury. So that's secondly, it's the jewel of the crown of the game. I just told you the revenues before. If you took that out, that's something, and it's something they haven't got, will never have. There's two things they don't have that we need to capitalise on. We capitalise on Origin, and the second thing is international football, and we are fools the way we manage and handle international football, because it is a gruel they can never get. No matter how many times they play the Irish in some ridiculous game that doesn't even exist and no one watches, it'll never be international football. They'll never be able to play Tonga. They'll never be able to play New Zealand. At the end of the day, we've got to do. So I wouldn't be tampering with the Origin too much, because I think whether we like it or not, it's a major part of our revenue. It is difficult, but you've got to manage it. And the second thing is that it leads towards hardening players for international football and creating the final part. You can't have Tonga and Samoa playing in a week's preparation in the middle of the season, or flying England out to bloody California to play Tonga. It's got to be a completely organised 5-year organisation where it's really, really important. And secondly, you shouldn't be selling it off as part of the deal over here, which is an add-on, a dag on the end of a sheep. It should be treated what it really should be. It should be one of the jewels in the crown. Until we start thinking about that, and don't just think that the NRL is the only competition in the world, and we still do think that, we will never get what we need out of international football and the money involved.
I don't mind the 3-week gap for Origin. I mean, people say, it extends it. Well, maybe make the club season shorter somehow, or I don't mind that at all. I think it's a good idea. It contains it. It makes it an event. Yes, we lose some momentum, but the argument is that we're losing momentum through games that don't have the star players anyway, or have injured players playing when they shouldn't play. The quality is not the same. I mean,
that gap, you're going to get players getting rested up over injuries who aren't playing Origin. They're going to come back, and obviously there'll be some performance things that you'll need to do to make sure that you're staying. But then you'll come back and you go the second half of the year and you're all humming. You know, you've got that rest in the bank. You're breaking up what is already a long season, and you're not losing your best players.
And then you play the internationals at the end.
You have to play at the end.
Well, I agree with you, Cho, though. The internationals, there has to be a strategic plan around how we grow the game internationally. It's one of my pet hates about.
But the game's grown lately because of the countries themselves, not because of the bloody league.
Yeah,
Tonga and
it's
Samoa
grown by the Polynesian influence.
The players,
to play for
the
their
players,
players. Like,
the players.
Yeah, here's a great stat for you. Do you know how many players who have been born in the Pacific Islands play in NRL who have been born in the Pacific Islands?
Not many.
Have a guess how many? 17. 17. I've just said 46% of players.
After them, maybe Fijian.
Well, there's 7. There's 7 Fijians who were born in Fiji, I'm talking about. Not they have parents, but that's all there is. It's not. And what I'm trying to say is if they hadn't made the decisions that they made to give up a lot of money to play for Tonga, for Australia, to play for, mate, and look what it's done. It's created a competition where there's not just 3 teams in it. You know, and it's what I'm trying to say is that could be even grown further than it is. It's a license to print money if we do it the right way. And if you want to talk about how you stick it to the AFL, they can never do it.
Yeah, I really like what they've done this year, like how you had the guys who had played for Australia previously and they've gone out and played for Samoa and just made it such an even playing field. And like when you watch the World Cup, you genuinely were excited going, well, it's not just going to be Australia, New Zealand, and England. So it's like it's actually genuine. And it makes you really want to watch it. And I feel like if we can progress that over the next few years and getting people that are happy to do that, it's going to grow.
It is, mate.
At the end of the day, people love to watch their home nation.
They do.
If the Matildas have taught us anything, they've taught us that. Like the energy and the excitement that's around that team. You know, we can create that and help other countries create that as well. I think we need a strong English game.
We do. Well, the English game needs to have a look at itself.
100%. But by growing the game internationally, it encourages kids to play it more.
And
France. For me, what it does...
I don't think the Czech Republic's ever going to make the World Cup. Just tell Nigel Wood that for me, will you?
We're going to take a quick break from the podcast to tell you about AG1, the daily foundational nutritional drink with all your needs in the one place. I like to look after my health, and AG1 takes care of that for me. No more tablets, vitamin pills, all the health nutrition I need, all in the one place. Every single morning, it's as easy. Open up the fridge, scoop of AG1 in a glass, cold water, stir it with a fork, drink it. It tastes great, and it helps me know. It gives me the peace of mind that all my nutritional needs are taken care of, all in the one drink. It really is as simple as that. And also, anybody that knows anything about health benefits knows that it comes with adding simple routines to your day. It's not about magic pills. They're not going to work. AG1 helps me be the best version of myself by having this new habit of every single morning having that drink. I know my nutritional bases are covered thanks to AG1. A lot of athletes are now taking AG1, and with 75 high quality ingredients, it's no wonder why. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/buyround. That's drinkag1.com/buyround. Check it out. What Origin really taps into is what it diverts from club football and it comes to that tribalism.
100%.
Like, unfortunately, in NRL, it used to be tribal, and due to things like Supercoach, tipping competitions, everyone watches every game, and there's not that sense of hatred anymore. And I think
the Roosters. What's your
no. In all seriousness, it's not, because everyone's got a Supercoach team now.
Yeah.
So
I think the interaction of players changing clubs as well has had an impact on that for sure, which didn't happen as much before.
That softens that tribalism. That softens that hatred. But Queensland play New South Wales, we can tap into the hatred of the states.
It's
one
great.
another. We can tap into the hatred. People. Rugby league, such a respectful game. At the end of it, we all come together as one. It's some of the most amazing scenes. The physicality that's involved, the brutality, the smashing one another, the hate that's caused to one another. But we come together. But from a fan's point of view,
And no violence.
no violence.
Well,
In the
unbelievable.
stands. So the Tonga Samoa, what a rivalry. What tribalism to tap into.
Cools your blood, doesn't it?
England v Australia. New Zealand v Australia. We need to drive that
Agreed.
hatred of one another. The power of hate is absolutely phenomenal. It really is.
Well,
It's
I've
what
never seen a
drives-
better game than, was it the third game last year of Origin where it was just chaos from the start? That was that.
It was,
Sub-
yeah.
Sub-
With 3 blokes, 4 blokes,
I've never seen
head
it.
knocks.
I've never seen anything like it.
No.
Like I was sitting there going, "What's going on? What are we watching?" Like,
South versus East last year was
Sydney
Yeah.
Sunday was up there.
that was madness. That was just pure madness.
But some people watching that South Sea Roosters game go, "Oh no, I've got him as my captain,
Yeah.
and he's been sin-binned." Not so much about the result.
No,
it was
I
like,
agree.
"Oh yeah, I want Souths to win, but geez, Radley's just gone off. I've got him as skipper today." So it changes how we
attracting different
view.
audience, aren't you?
It changes how we view sport. But I think with the representative side of things, that's what we've got, and we really need to tap into.
I agree.
And the international game, it's been neglected for far too long. I'm
Agreed.
very grateful that we've got a plan in place.
Yeah.
Look at the impact of the Rugby Union World Cup now. When I was a boy, and I'm sure you can all speak to this, if you'd have said Italy will be playing, no hope. It's Argentina. No hope. It's Japan. What's the point?
Fiji.
What's the point? What's the point? Yeah, Fiji. What's the point in having international pathway?
Australia playing, are they?
What's the point? But if we put the resources there, it will grow. It continues to grow. Like Richard said about the number of people born in those areas, we've scratched the surface. It needs to continue to grow. Just quickly, it loops nicely back into Origin about eligibility. Do we need to look at how we change that? Is it currently fair that the current rules and regulations about what it means to qualify to be a Queenslander or qualify to be to represent New South Wales? Because when I was playing, perhaps if I'd have been at the peak of my powers when I first came here, maybe I'd have been picked if it was on form.
Yeah.
But discrimination against English, it's discriminatory, right?
See, as
But
an
how can
Aussie,
we-
there's no way I'd want you playing Origin.
and I wouldn't
me
want to.
either.
No way.
And I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
play either because I want to play for England.
Yeah.
But there is an argument that
I know what you're saying,
maybe not an Aussie, maybe not an English person.
Yeah.
What about someone?
How did you feel when Aussies are getting picked for England? Be honest.
It depends on the reason.
Yeah.
It genuinely
Yeah,
depends on the
they're
reason.
genuine links to their English heritage.
and
Yeah.
genuine passion to
Yeah.
want to represent
Yeah.
the country of England for various reasons.
But I just feel like it takes away from that tribalism you spoke about as well.
agreed.
Like, as a
Yeah.
New South Welshman, that's all I want to do.
But that's why we've got to protect it. It needs to be, in
Yes.
my opinion, it does need protection,
Yep.
not loopholes into it.
I just think you're going to make a choice. If you want to play for Australia, then you're Origin eligible. If you don't want to play for Australia, you're not Origin eligible. That's just got to be the bottom line. And the only time that you can deviate from that is in a World Cup year. Simple as that. So we make sure that we're getting a genuine World Cup. It's not that hard. It doesn't have to be that
That's a
hard.
good system.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get, and then if there's some real passion to play for your country, like there was Jason Demetriou could have played for Queensland. He made his choice to play for New Zealand. So he missed
And
out
then
from
he made
playing.
his
And then he
choice to
made
play
his
for
choice
Tonga.
to play for Tonga. But he knew by doing both of those that he wasn't going to play for Queensland.
So where's the line? Where's the line in representing Queensland for because I believe now it's the age of 13.
Yeah, that's
Like what changes at 13? What changes at 12 years?
It makes you
360.
eligible.
Yeah, it makes you so.
But when you sign your contract in the NRL, you have to tick who you play for in the NRL.
But if we-
So is it fair if someone comes over here at 14? They're not allowed to play.
If it's the rules say at 13, that's the
That's
rules.
the rules, right?
Yeah, it's clear.
But I'm saying, are we happy
Yeah,
with
I
those
think they've
eligibility
refined
rules?
those rules over the years to try and make it, as Jason said, as fair as possible
Yeah.
for somebody to be able to play if they choose to play for Queensland and New South Wales. And the rule online is at 13. It used to be, for example, Greg, and why Greg played for, is it,
First
it was
inter-
your first
senior
representative.
footy,
The
yeah.
first representative.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
New South Wales didn't pick him. That's why he's filthy on New South Wales. He went to Queensland with Melbourne Storm, and Queensland picked him. and 17s. That's why he's still today. Sorry.
Do you still feel like moving over, though, from another country at 14, that you're going to have that innate want to play for someone or something or represent something? Like that's what I feel like Origin's about. And before it sort of fell by the wayside, city country as well, before it sort of became a little bit of a we'll pick, sort of fill the numbers almost, that was always about like, I want to represent country because it was like, that's where I'm from, that's my passion. City's the same. And there was a hatred towards it. And obviously the next step up from that was Origin. So I just feel like if you're coming over at 14, I don't feel like you can have that same innate feeling as someone who's born and bred into it and has lived it for their whole life.
Yeah.
So that's around eligibility, and I know there's been talk about yourself and Sam Burgess and
Sunnyville,
changing eligibility to play for Origin, and no disrespect, but I'm not for it because would you want me to play for England if I lived over there when I was 20? You know what I mean? No heritage, no family background.
Well, no.
Well, you know what if I played for England?
Well, again, it depends.
Yeah.
Because you were there for a very long time.
I was there for a very long time.
You're
but
Greek international.
Yeah, I know. But I'm English. One side of my family are English. But it's interesting because I had an option when you get over there, who do you want to play for? And you got to tick the box and whatever. And the only reason I think some of them will tick that box, and Victor Radley's probably a rare example, who's got an English father, who's born and bred in England. He sounds English. It's in his blood that he's English. And although it's in my blood, but
that's what it comes. Yeah,
he's got a passion. Exactly. I've grown up. I've watched GB tours, Australian tours over to England. Grown up loving it, watching it, wanting Australia to win all the time. And now I'm going to go and play. And the other side of it is, I know if I'm selected in that team, that there are blokes in that team that I know do not want to play with this Aussie bloke. And that's where I think you lose that tribalism and that strength of it. You know, it's not always, you want to win, but, you know, I remember when there's some Aussies who come over when we're in England and come over and they've got this, Aussie, that, and it quickly irks some of the English. And there's not a lot said about it, but you can see there's a little wry eye, there's a little look about it, and F off back home, blah, blah. If you don't
Is that what they said to Wade Bennett as well?
Especially if they play well.
See you, Wade.
Well, it's interesting because Wayne coached Great Britain in the last series that Great Britain was here.
And he coached England as well.
And did a great job coaching England, picking English players. You know what I mean?
I can remember he picked Chris McQueen to play for England,
Yeah.
which raised a lot
of
eyebrows.
eyebrows.
I was like, I didn't even know he was eligible.
Not did I, by the way.
And again,
I bought him to South
I played,
from Kingaroy.
you know,
He's a redhead as far as I was concerned.
yeah. And if you ask some of the staunch players at Gareth Ellis's and the Jamie Peacocks, and deep down they want to play alongside their English brothers who've grown up over there and have a real hatred for Australia.
Yep.
That's the key. It's not whether you want to play for England. It's whether you absolutely hate that opposition, because that's where the tribalism comes from.
Jamie, you probably don't remember it, but I interviewed you. I think it was in Liverpool at the start of one of those tournaments, and I remember seeing that genuine love for England when you're speaking, and also a hatred like you're talking about. That's the same as when Dale talks about Origin and stuff. I mean, I could see that in
wonderful.
you, and I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that part of talking to you, and like I think that's what makes it, isn't it?
100%. You see when the Tongans do their pre-game stuff, and the Samoans, and they do their rituals and then their anthems, and it's just
my rugby league
wow.
life was I was managing New Zealand side in the World Cup in 2015, and I walked out at Hamilton, and it was just a sea of orange, and I thought, what's done? They were there so early and singing and carrying, and they knocked us over, of course. They played at Fiji, so they can start me on that. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, I just felt the pride of that rugby league had got, where you could pack out a stadium and completely pack it out, and 90% of them were Tongans, not New Zealanders. We were representing New Zealand. And there was 90% Tongan there.
unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. So I agree with it. One thing I will say, it's a bit like a junior league grassroots stuff. Australia no longer is a super team.
No.
That's what we were. We were a super team, because everyone would have played for us. You're getting paid $30,000 a game, and
Well, again, that's where the interest for me comes from, people who aren't from that origin wanting to play.
Correct.
Obviously, it's the pinnacle of the game, but there's a fair cash reward as well. So how do we create an international program that's generating some revenue for players to get rewarded for the time and the commitments they have to make to
That's
it?
what it's going to come down to, isn't
It
it,
is.
JD, to make playing for England, playing for New Zealand, playing for Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, whoever it may be, just as meaningful and incentivised as playing for Origin. Origin is fascinating. Obviously, growing up in England, loving the pinnacle of our sport and watching these two teams go at it, but coming from a non-rugby league area, people can't comprehend how an interstate competition
you're right.
is the pinnacle of the sport, even above the international. It doesn't make sense when you go and present that to others that don't come from a rugby league background. It's ingrained in us because we've all grown up watching it. But those people that aren't, it's kind of like, why is interstate above?
But if you're a Queenslander, mate, and you lived through all those goddamn years where our best players came down here because of pokies, and you got belted every freaking year by New South Wales, and mate, when the Origin started and we beat them, it was like, we're back. And we hate you bastards, and we're going to give it to you no matter what. And it took New South Wales ages to realise that the tide had turned and that they had to come back with the same sort of passion, or they weren't going to win it. So the hatred, mate, is not just palpable amongst the players, the fans and supporters. But what I love most is there's still no brawls. The Blues walk down the middle of bloody Caxton Street and get booed and carried, but no one hurts them or punches them. It's just one of the great hatreds without violence in the world of sport. It's a wonderful sport. And, you're always going to... All my kids... Queenslanders, even though some of them weren't, because, mate, they've grown up with the hatred of New South Wales. Simple as that.
What would it mean to see England win a series or win a World Cup?
I cheer for them. I cheer for them.
I do too, because I'm Australian, always want Australia to win, but I know the impact.
Correct.
That international. I was in England when they won the Rugby Union World Cup, and the difference that made and the investment that created and they're still living off the back of that. It completely changes the game, and I think we need to create an environment where those countries still have that hope to win a World Cup.
Oh, of course.
Grow the game, give them opportunities to grow.
Here I'm on the manager of New Zealand in the World Cup, and I wasn't sad that we got beat by Tonga, because I just thought this is the launch of another world in international sport. In rugby league, it really is. It was a day that international rugby league became, when they beat New Zealand, and New Zealand with 90% of the fans from Tonga, it's amazing. And so that's why you always want Australia to win. You're happy when they win, but the reality is, if England won it, it wouldn't that mind, because I love international sport, rugby league. Sorry.
So we almost need to protect our borders when it comes to state of origin. A little bit. I think we can all agree that. One of the things I found myself in a little bit of hot water this year is
unusual for you, Joe.
Comments around a dead rubber. So. Sporting culture really interests me. And at the time, I had some friends coming over from America. So I told them we were going to Origin 3.
Yeah.
Origin 3, hang on. Queensland have won the first 2 games. Why have you got a game 3? Because over there in American culture, best of 7 series, once you get to 4 wins...
There's only one person who could ask on that.
Oh, I mean, being involved in a couple of series... For me, I feel like it's a matter of redemption or dominance almost. Correct. It's like, well, game 3 is, I want to redeem myself because I don't want to go, if it was a 2 if we played the 3, I feel like you want redemption or you want to be dominant. So for me, I feel like you got to play the
Ask
game.
any player.
From a player, there's heaps of pride involved.
But that's only.
But just going into the following year,
you only think that way, in my opinion, because
there's another option. Yeah.
If it was like it was in America, there's no way we'd switch. So there's no way, if we had a best of 3 series and a team won 2 games and it was over, there's no way the broadcasters or anybody else would go, you know what we need to do? Because whenever it goes to 1-1 and we get that decider, why don't we just always bring in that game 3? There's no way it would switch. There's no way America are looking at the model here in Australia and going, why don't we do that?
That's why they're Americans, that mate. They don't understand our culture.
I actually agree with you when you say it like that. Yeah, it does.
It's commercial though, isn't it?
It's revenue again. So how do we, if it's a best of 2 if it's a best of 3 and it's 1 in 2, how do we still manage to generate revenue?
It's not too much.
Well, how does that affect the season again then as well?
61, and it goes on.
How does it then affect the season? So if you've factored in, let's say we've committed to a mid-year 3 games, how does that then affect the season if that third game's? You know what I mean? Do you pull it back to, say, round 16 occurs at the end of that 3rd week, or do you have it as a week off? Like that's another thing to consider.
Just the clubs that would be impacted by Origin just wouldn't be impacted.
I think
So you just
commercially,
wouldn't, you
it just has
wouldn't
to
have
happen.
that. You wouldn't if you didn't have Origin. So let's take for example this year. If you don't have Origin 3, then the
Cody
the
Walker
team
doesn't play.
then those players don't get affected.
Man of the match.
But then what I'm saying is, you've factored in 3 weeks through the middle of the year. If we're saying, well, that's a dead rubber, we're just going to resume that at a later time because you don't know that we're not playing 3 games until the end of that second game.
But if we can't get organised to have a third game, then we're kidding ourselves.
But it's a I know what you're saying. It's a midweek game, so those players who miss out for Origin just don't miss out.
Yeah,
they
they
just
don't-
play.
they
They don't
just
miss
play.
out the game
They
before
do.
or the game after. They just they're back.
they just
now.
play.
Because
it'd
be different if it was a 3-week standalone block.
Yeah.
Because then, how do we change it? But
Yeah.
the schedule's already in there.
The schedule, nothing would change. All that would happen, it would reduce the impact
Yeah.
from a game that.
What do you,
quote-unquote
James?
means-
What do you say to just say Tooheys is a sponsor or Westpac are a sponsor, and they're not getting that extra exposure which they've paid $2 million to be on the front of the jumper for?
Well, again, Danny, I think we look at too much on what we miss, but we don't focus on what we gain. So there's no better sporting phrase in America, I've been told this, than Game 7. Everything just goes boom. No better phrase in Australia than Origin Decider. Think about the build-up then. So it's okay, you run a bit of a risk as a sponsor and a broadcaster of, we might not get our 3 games, but if we do get that third one, oh my God, we've got the best phrase, Origin Decider.
I love the idea, but I just think commercially it's too hard.
Imagine the interest in game 1 and 2, though. Like,
Again,
you winning
yeah.
game 1 is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then game 2
it's like
could be over now. So
well, I think we already get that with game 2.
You're
We
tampering
already
with the
get that
golden goose.
yeah, I'm not sure we do though.
You're
'cause
tampering with the golden goose.
yeah.
He's still taking one of those 1 or 2 games to a different.
This is
outside
not
New South
America
Wales
with the
or
audience
Queensland.
that we've got. We've got a very finite audience,
Yeah.
and broadcasters and sponsors need to know their exposure is going to be at a certain level to pay the money. All you're going to do is reduce the sponsor by 2/3. So instead of $35 million worth of income, you're going to get 26, 23, 24.
And even a bad
Potentially.
rating third Origin is still one of the highest. most
still
watched
nearly sell out
programs.
in the stadium as well, this
Money.
game.
It's
In
just,
terms of locations as well, like are we playing, we played one in Adelaide, we had one in Perth before. How does the fixture work then? Like, do we play first game in Queensland, second game in New South Wales, third game somewhere else? You know what I mean? Like, it's
Well,
that's the other thing.
Well, do you even take it away? Or do you just play it, incentivize winning game 1? If that goes to a series decider, that's where the game will be played.
I loved the 2-1 model. I was a massive fan. And I don't know if the game grows that much from taking it outside of New South Wales and Queensland. But you knew when you had 2 games that there was the chance of your team winning that series was higher than it was if it was 2 in Queensland. You knew how hard that was going to be to win.
I agree.
And I think, what do we get in terms of if we're taking it away, why are we taking it away? Is it obviously in states are paying for it.
Well, that's what it fundamentally
States are
then.
paying
It
It doesn't affect them.
Yeah,
Government.
because
com-
it can't
it
be
comes down-
participation.
In fact, it's better.
yeah.
It comes down
Not
to money, doesn't it? And this is
does.
why I think, for all the complaints around, player welfare, all that, we pay a price and it comes to financial, in my opinion. We're going to wrap up this chat on representative football. But again, magic wand, keep or change one thing that we've spoken about. I'll go the other way this time. Richer.
Oh, my thing's always that as I said, the golden goose is international football, and we should concentrate more on that.
Definitely.
Origin takes care of itself.
Definitely keep 3 games Origin.
Yeah. Keep Origin and grow internationals.
Yeah, I'm.
Keep it where it is, or move.
Yeah, I just don't think the game can move it. I don't think there's too much revenue. It just has to stay where it is.
I'm with Danny, keeping the game 3, even if it's a dead rubber, keeping it. And mid-year as well, I think. I don't think you can play it at the end of the year.
Yep.
All right, good chat, lads. All right, what an episode that was, covering all things representative football. But now we've got a very special part of the show, brought to you by Tooheys. How do you feel? I feel like a Tooheys or 2. And this is how the fans become involved, because we've heard from the coach, we've heard from the player, we've heard from the administrator, we've heard from the journalist, you've heard from me, the host, as well. But we want to hear from you, the fans. So after this episode, tell us some feedback, some questions, and I'll get to those next week on all things representative football. We have put the feelers out for the previous episodes on the media and grassroots, so we'll be going through some of those now, and this is all thanks to Tooheys. But make sure you get involved. We want to hear from the fans as well. We've heard from everybody else, but we want to hear from you. So, first question, JD Caponino on YouTube. I think of the news media, in quote unquote, these days as a Hollywood movie. It has a director, it has paid actors, it has a message, and most importantly, it has a bottom line that needs to be met. I don't think of journalists anymore as any more truthful, quote unquote, than Forrest Gump. They are no longer there to present facts and reality. They are there to create stories and drama of whatever resonates with the audience, which may be loosely based on a fact and stretched until it's a full-blown movie. Well, JD, I don't think this is uniquely a problem with rugby league. I think it's part of the media in general. We look at how people take on their content. I don't think if you were I've actually looked at a little bit of the history of news, and it used to be around presenting the truth or multiple sides, but now, especially if you look at America, well, Fox and CEN, they present their sides. I think in terms of rugby league, there is content that needs to be filled, but it's not the only sport. There's some weeks heavy news days where there's lots to get through, and perhaps you miss a story. There are some weeks that are particularly quiet. And obviously with time allocations for certain shows and whatnot, they do need to drag it out or bring up old things. It is kind of like a Hollywood movie, but that's probably why we love it a little bit as well. I think there's a case for both, but thanks for that, JD Caponino on YouTube, talking all things media episode. Another one, media episode, Joey Clark on YouTube. This is amazing content, first of its kind, so, well, thank you very much. The media is more powerful than Peter Volandis. The media drive the agenda of the game. The entire game is run by the media. No one cares about the truth. It's all about the perception the media creates around a certain story. It's so scary how much influence the media has on the game. Again, Joey, thanks for the question and the comment. I agree with you that the media are so powerful, and people have to use the media because they know how powerful it is. They can drive a narrative for good and for bad, or for profit if people click. But that's where I guess the consumer, people like yourself, need to be wise to what they click on. Vote with your eyes, vote with your ears. If you don't like it, turn off and make a stand. But I think generally speaking, it's hard to get the truth, and we people naturally they're interested in rumours and what may happen. They want to know if a player is talking to another club, if something comes of it or not. It's very difficult to present sports news in a precise and professional manner. I think anybody that sets out with that full endeavour, especially on the on certain platforms, they really struggle to create content and create a living. People want to know about what may be happening, what they think is going to be the next transfer move, the next player swap deal or whatever it be, which coach is in and which coach is out, and that people enjoy that, and people enjoy hearing from people that have gotten in at a certain club, and that drives a lot of the conversation. To be honest, a lot of it is, I think shows like the magazine style shows, they replicate what's happening in and around the pubs, the cafes, the homes, the breakfast tables of groups of friends and families that stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to their favourite player, their club, what's going on. So I think it's just a little bit more informed version of that, which personally I really do enjoy. But talking about the truth, look, that's a very difficult one. But yes, look, the media, incredibly powerful. All right, on to the next one. It's Nathan Chiplin on YouTube. Love the chat, boys. I thought the access to players part was interesting. If you look at motorsport, they are chatting to the media as they sit in the car ready to go. I think warm-up access for NRL is unreal. There should be more of it. Well, Nathan, I agree with you. Now, I agree with you. Put my player's hat on or get in a time machine and go back. I couldn't think of anything worse. But attitudes are changing. Players seem more open to access from the networks. I think it's great. And fundamentally, if it drives audiences, if it drives that fan engagement, then it puts up the price, puts up their profile. And, you know, I think there is a change. I'm probably a bit old school, but there is a change happening with the modern athlete. I think we'll see more of it, but be a great question to ask Jason Demetriou or any of the other coaches, because I know what coaches are like. They're so frightened of some information about what's about to happen leaking out, or thinking that the player is going to be distracted. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me to see a coach use it as to their advantage. They're always looking to gain a competitive advantage, and maybe put out a bit of a false flag in the interview. Tell the player to tell the interviewer in the warm up that they're practicing for early kicks. Hopefully, the opposition are watching that, listening in. They start to change their game plan, whatever it may be. Early kicks, so they start to drop back earlier, and then you had no intention of doing it whatsoever. So, look, coaches are always looking to gain a competitive advantage, and this is one of those areas that's coming in. Personally, I think it's great. In a time when I've worked for Fox, and I think I spoke to Api Coruscant while he's in the warm-up, mic'd up. It's fantastic access. It takes the fan into another level of experience. It takes the fan inside the mind of the player before they go out. That's a pretty unique experience to be warming up, ready to get going and play a game of rugby league football, and just those thoughts about what's actually going on. I think it's amazing. Hopefully we'll see more of it as the games become more important. It does tend to be towards the back end when the games don't mean quite as much for certain teams, but I'd love to see more of it. And thanks for the feedback, Nathan. Steve Hart on Instagram, thanks for this one. Kids need to learn how to win and lose. That's life. You win some and you lose some. When you lose, you train, you get better to achieve results. You win, then you know the feeling of achievement and keep training hard to keep on winning. Steve, great question or great comment. I agree. We do need to learn how to lose. That's very important. Life isn't a red carpet. Success isn't linear. We don't always travel slightly up. And I think no matter what, you never lose. You always learn, and you look to get better. Even when you win, you always look to get better as well. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about Penrith is even then when they win, they're always looking to improve and continue. But that sense of achievement, keep training hard and get what the results that they happen. So I agree with you, Steve. Okay, final comment from the fans on the Grassroots episode comes from IKSN Australia via YouTube. All I'll say is with grassroots, lots of mentions about AFL when it's soccer that is slowly going to take over. I'm a lifetime league player and coach coming from a rugby league family. Soccer is absolutely dominating at grassroots and kids, and daylight is second. Laugh out loud. Parents see less injury, less issues with CTE and head knocks. Smaller kids thrive and ultimately get the rewards. If they're going to make the highest level, they are astronomically bigger than league or make it at the highest level. So it's a no-brainer. League needs to really step up their effort to connect with the communities and kids in schools. Look, IKSN Australia, there are some things I agree with there. Rugby League does need to have a lot more focus on grassroots, get it into the schools. I don't agree with that soccer's taking over, though. Yes, we have many grassroots fields are filled with young soccer players, but the chances of making it are significantly smaller. So, yes, the rewards are potentially greater when you're talking financial, but the odds of making it are far slimmer due to the absolute millions and millions and millions of people and children that play across the world. It's one of the most difficult sports to make it in. When people ask me about who are the best athletes in the world, I would say it's soccer players, because they face the hardest competition out of any sport to make it to the top, because they have the most number of players or potential participants at both male and female. So, look, if you're entering your child into a sporting endeavor for them to quote unquote make it, which I don't think you should be doing anyway. Soccer can't have amazing rewards, but the opportunities are much slimmer. In terms of risk of injury, I agree to an extent, but that said, there are recent studies which connect soccer with the potential for CTE, that increasing due to heading of the football, which I know they're looking at outlawing or changing around. But look, rugby league provides certain challenges, and that bigger person, the small people, you actually gain something by taking on bigger and stronger people. And perhaps maybe we do need to look at the weight category, but when you look at the NRL, it's not full of massive human beings. There are some of them, but there's some small ones as well. You look at Ruben Cotter, for example. Is there a greater example of someone at origin level that plays in the middle of the field that isn't the biggest guy but gets his job done, knows how to do that? Yes, they use different techniques. He's not going to power over you because he's such a big body, but he finds a way to get it done. So there's plenty of examples of that as well. Ruben Cotter was just one that sprung to mind. But look, of course we can do more. But the soccer revolution, people thought that would happen with players like Viduka, Kuehl, Cahill. But I speak to Brent Reid about this quite a lot. But yes, soccer is something that we need to be concerned of. But fundamentally, Australia, I find that there's a love of collision sports here, and that's ingrained in the culture. And I think there's a huge amount of benefits from any youth taking part in that game at some level. But look, we share the sporting stage, and Rugby League's doing a fantastic job. Of course, it can do more. Okay, well, I really enjoyed that section. All thanks to Tooheys. How do you feel? I feel like a Tooheys or two. And the fans, thank you for your participation in this. We didn't have a fan on the show, but this is your way to get involved. So keep those questions, those comments coming, and we'll be addressing the very best ones each and every week.